We watch a lot of TV.
It's time for the Telecast, brought to you by
the GCRN Radio Network.
Telecast, get ready for a blast from the past. We're talking classic children's TV shows that we watched over 20 years ago. It's time for the Telecast, so sit back now and relax with your host OptimusSolo from the folks at GCRN Radio. It's gonna be geeky to the max, so let's get you to the Telecast.
And here is your host for the show, OptimusSolo.
Thank you for the final time, Mouse, Chipmunk, and Guy with a really deep voice. As he said, I'm your host, OptimusSolo, and I would like to say hello and welcome to the 35th episode of the Telecast, brought to you by the GeekCast Radio Network. Today I am joined by the one and only TFG1 Mike. Hello.
That's right, I am the fucking great one.
And together we will be talking about...
Discover this.
Guys.
Ready.
What? Like the cowboys say. Sing it again now.
I'm on TV.
Science rules.
Everybody look around, hear the sounds of the Christmas gonna come your way.
Surf dudes with attitude, kind of groovy, laid back move. Marshall, Will, and Holly.
Hocus Pocus.
Best of times.
That's right, folks. We are talking about the entire season 1 slate of the Telecast. So that is what we're doing today. We're kind of doing a wrap up of season 1, bringing season 1 to a close, grand finale, fireworks, drum rolls, all kinds of things. We're going to be reflecting back a little bit about season 1 of the Telecast, looking forward a little bit to season 2 of the Telecast, and some different things along the way, including the unveiling of our theme song contest winner, which will happen at some point during this episode. And the only way to claim your prize is if you listen to this episode, figure out that you win, and do the following steps that I tell you at that point. That is how you will claim your prize. So if you don't listen, you don't claim your prize. But we will reveal who won the contest. I guess kind of starting off real quick, we'll touch a little bit upon the journey that was the Telecast. Now, obviously, we were doing Tooncast at the time, a while back. And the one thing that kind of was triggered in my mind was we were talking a whole bunch of fun stuff about retro cartoons. We were dealing with stuff like the classics, like Hanna-Barbera and stuff. We were talking about stuff that we grew up on, like Transformers and all the different 80s properties. We talked about some of the 90s stuff like Animaniacs and Tiny Toons, and at one point something similar triggered to me that had kind of triggered in my mind years before, when I put a theme song compilation CD set together. And I was working at Target at the time, and I had a few fellow geeks, one who ended up joining me eventually on the Geekcast Radio Network, Adolfo Shabadoo, and then a couple other friends. I put together a 2-disc CD compilation of theme songs. One disc was all 70s and earlier cartoon theme songs, and one disc was 80s and 90s theme songs. One of them ended up being longer than the other based on the number of shows. So I filled out the one disc with about 10 or 15 theme songs from actual live-action kids shows, because I thought that's something that always kind of gets left aside. We always talk about cartoons and that stuff from our childhood, but we don't talk about the actual live-action shows. So that's why I included them on those discs. And kind of when we were doing our journey through the Tooncast, I was thinking the same thing. We're talking about a whole bunch of fun stuff from my childhood, but we're not talking about Saved by the Bell or a variety of other shows. So the idea was to rectify that, and not just rectify that, but set up a whole podcast that's going to talk about retro television. Since we had stuff covering cartoons, we had stuff covering toys, we had stuff covering now video games, now comic books, etc. But I was feeling like there was movies we weren't covering retro TV. So that's where Telecast came about. We plotted out about a gazillion seasons.
Dude, do you even remember that night?
Yes, Mike and I plotted out stuff. I mean, I kind of came up with a rough draft, and then we kind of got talking one night on Skype when I lived in my old apartment when I was teaching and had a lot of spare time because I wasn't in any type of relationship. And we plotted out 210 episodes.
210 episodes took us 7.5 hours on Skype.
Yeah, 6 seasons and 210 episodes is what we plotted out as the potential for what Telecast could be. Now, obviously, we were just starting it, so we had no idea if anybody would even like it or how long we would stick with it or whatever. But we thought, hey, if ever in a perfect world, this is all the stuff we would want to cover if we were given infinite time and opportunity. So that's kind of where Telecast came about. And of course, I decided to start season 1 as that retro kids live action, and then the plan was every season to jump to a different genre of retro TV. So the first one was going to be all the retro live action kids shows, and as has been throughout the idea and the kind of evolution of Telecast, it's always been going to be centered on 80s and 90s TV, with a few ways built in to glance back at stuff that was a little bit older. But that wasn't kind of the focus. The core focus was 80s and 90s, as that being the time where Mike and I grew up and kind of what our bread and butter is, I guess you could say. So that journey began back in November of 2010, which would be 4 years ago.
Yes.
So the very first episode, which was Salute Your Shorts, aired November 8th, 2010. And as you're listening to this, it is November 8th, 2014. So obviously, we didn't get the season done in the same manner that we thought we would. That is an understatement because
all I could do is laugh, dude. I'm sorry. That's all I could do is laugh.
the season wrap-up show was to happen November 8th, 2011. So we missed that by 3 years. It was basically supposed to be a year for each season, kind of how it was set up. Sometimes life gets in the way. I'm not trying to make excuses, but like I said, I lived in an apartment then. I live in a house now. I was single then. I am in a relationship now. I went through a period of time without a computer, without internet, the dark times of OptimusSolo, where I was trying to phone in my appearances at the Geekcast radio network. And a lot of other things have happened, other things that we've done at the network that have kind of taken my time. I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to make excuses, but there's only so many hours in a week, and sometimes I had to dedicate my hours to other shows or other ventures. Buying a house obviously takes up a lot of time. Changing careers, changing jobs takes up a good amount of effort. And so that was kind of the gist of it. But we are able finally, 4 years later, to wrap up season 1. And the plan is now to venture into another season that will not take 4 years. Because if it does, I will be old and gray by the time we ever get done with this thing.
You already are.
I am starting to get gray, actually. That is very disturbing. It's very disturbing. I'm 2 weeks away from my birthday, and it's not.
I was gonna say the sad thing is I'm a year older than you, and it's pretty bad when you're already turning old and gray, and I have not had any gray hairs yet.
So how we're gonna do this? The only gray hair I ever get is in my goatee. Every once in a while I'll have one pop up there, but I guess I'd rather have it there than on the top of my head. I haven't seen no grays yet on the top of my head. So how we're going to do this episode, we're going to take a quick look back at season 1, kind of a trip down memory lane since it's been 4 years, kind of catch everybody up on what we covered. I will reveal the listener's choice winner at some point, and then we'll kind of take a look at all the feedback and the iTunes reviews we got, and then we'll look to the future and what season 2 the genre is going to be and what some of the shows are that we're going to cover in season 2. So starting up, we're just going to go kind of a block by block look back at season 1. The first block of shows that we covered, and for those of you that aren't familiar and haven't been following us the whole time, what we've been doing is we cover a certain kind of loosely connected block of shows, and then we would put a supplemental episode in there, and then we would kind of continue on to another block. The first block of shows that we covered was kind of the Nickelodeon block. It started with Salute Your Shorts. Then we covered The Adventures of Pete and Pete, Clarissa Explains It All, Are You Afraid of the Dark, and Hey Dude. Mike, you were on a couple of those episodes. You did The Adventures of Pete and Pete, and then Clarissa Explains It All. But you are familiar with Are You Afraid of the Dark, Hey Dude, and Salute Your Shorts, obviously.
I'm familiar with them, but I don't care.
but just looking back at the Nickelodeon block and those shows that we covered, what's your favorite part of retro TV when it came to Nickelodeon live-action kids shows? What did you like?
When it came to it, it was Snick. It was Saturday Night Nick. It didn't matter. My favorite show at the time was Clarissa. I also liked The Secret World of Alex Mack, which sadly we didn't cover in season 1. I don't know why, but whatever. Anyway, I liked Pete and Pete back in the day. Watching it back now, it's a little strange. The only cool thing about that show at this point in time, X number of years later, is the theme song, Hey Sandy. But really, Clarissa is really where it is good for me as far as that. That show was so cool, and it still is today.
Yeah, I remember watching shows like Hey Dude and Salute Your Shorts after school, or on Saturdays or whenever they aired, just kind of on their own. But I do remember that nighttime block where you had Clarissa Explains It All, Are You Afraid of the Dark, and a few of those shows backed up, one after the other in that SNCC block that you're talking about. That was definitely something that was very popular at the time. I think a lot of people can't relate to this that grew up after us or from other generations.
Mm-hmm.
When we grew up, basically outside of your Saturday morning lineups where all the networks were showing cartoons during Saturday morning, or
Mm-hmm.
your 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. like after school little blocks that some of the networks would do,
Yeah.
there wasn't a gazillion channels. You had your ABC, CBS, NBC, eventually Fox. There's no CW or WB at this time. You had your TBS, TNT, your USA Network, and you had Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon was really the place to go for shows if you were not an adult.
It pretty much was, and the sad thing is, and we'll kind of get to this in the other TV podcast when we get to it, but I keep doing research on the Disney Channel because I thought the Disney Channel started later than what it did. Like, I don't remember. We mentioned this in the Mickey Mouse Club episode. I don't remember the Disney Channel in 1989 as a 9-year-old. But that's right around the time, or close to the time, when that channel actually started.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. I remember watching Nickelodeon.
Yeah, I think it was a lot to do with how Disney started. And when they started, it was a lot of stuff that kids wouldn't have been interested in. It was more stuff that moms or families would have been interested in showing their really young kids.
Yeah.
And we were kind of past that point. But really, Nickelodeon, it was the first channel that we kind of had that was an entire slate geared towards kids. You had you had game shows, you had regular sitcom type shows, you had a whole variety of things, and that is what everybody went to watch TV when they were a kid. Growing up in the '80s was Nickelodeon. That you knew you were going to see something you liked when you turned to Nickelodeon. So it definitely was something that it isn't anymore. And something that doesn't exist anymore in our day and age, where there's a gazillion channels, there's Netflix, there's whatever, there's a gazillion ways to obtain your media. But back in the day, Nickelodeon was the go-to place back in the 80s. So they had a lot of good stuff. I think my favorite show out of this selection would probably have been Hey Dude, even though you hate it. I did kind of have a special affinity to Are You Afraid of the Dark, but I agree with you. Adventures of Pete and Pete, well, it wasn't something I was huge on back then. Still not something I like a ton of. I remember my sister being into Clarissa Explains It All a lot. Salute Your Shorts was fun, but I liked Hey Dude a little bit better. After the Nickelodeon block, we did a supplemental episode on JT joined me for this one, and we talked about our characters from season 1 that we would have picked as friends or people we would have wanted to hang out with most. It was entitled our best friends from season 1. So if you want to take a look back and see which people we thought would be cool to hang out with, that was the first supplemental episode. And then we entered a second block of shows, which I kind of titled the educational school-centered shows. These shows included Bill Nye the Science Guy, Beakman's World, Mr. Wizard's World, which a lot of people don't remember, Reading Rainbow, and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Now we got to stop on Reading Rainbow just for a second, because recently, in the last year or so, Reading Rainbow is coming back. LeVar Burton has raised godly amounts of money to bring that show back, and that's amazing.
Yep, it'll be back on like an internet forum type of situation there, and it's awesome that he's doing that. What was it? What's your favorite part of the educational shows that you watched when you were growing up? Did one of these stand out more than the other between Bill Nye, Beakman, Mr. Wizard, Reading Rainbow, and Mr. Rogers?
Beakman always I always thought Beekman was on drugs. I always thought Beekman was the guy that the Dare police officer told me to stay away from. I never liked Beekman's world. I don't know what it was about that guy. I never really
For
cared
some
for
reason,
him.
I hear a lot of people, and I think it's just because they're younger people that I'm hearing, but a lot of people refer more to Bill Nye, and then they're like, "Oh, Beekman was that that wannabe or the minor league
Yeah,
version of Bill Nye." I think that's more of an age thing
it probably is.
because I
Honestly,
think Bill
for
Nye came a little bit later than Beekman.
okay, I don't know. I'm not looking at
But
any
but
info.
I didn't see either one as like superior to the other necessarily. They're both kind of trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, but in two very different ways. Like Bill Nye was way more on the educational, whereas Beekman was kind of like, "Hey, here's some education. Now we're gonna go have fun."
And they were
Beekman
all
was like,
copying the godfather of this type of show, which was Mr. Wizards.
"Yeah." And see, I don't even remember Mr. Wizard's
That bald
World.
guy was awesome.
I remember the guy in the sweater. That's what I remember. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. That was, and again, it was because Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood came after Sesame Street. I know Sesame Street isn't in this block. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it's one of those things where, when I was growing up in Massachusetts, Sesame Street came on first. Mr. Rogers came on after, and you always were watching those two shows in the morning before you hurried off to the school bus.
Right.
Um, and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhoods, people can make all the jokes they want about the mailman and everything else and all that. It was really interesting, fun stuff.
It was one of a kind show that really did a good job, uh, just educating kids.
Exactly.
And not necessarily in a teachy like we're going to teach you math type thing, but just about the world and stuff around them.
Right.
Then we got into another supplemental episode. Mike joined me on this one, and that was the best parental figures from season 1 of the Telecast. So we talked about which mom or dad would be the best parental figure. So you can go back and check out the description says that you had some selections on your list that is sure to leave some people speechless. So I don't remember what those were.
I don't even remember
But,
that.
we'll have to go back and listen to that to see. Then we got into another block, and that would be the puppet block, which included things like Eureka's Castle, Today's Special, Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, and The Muppet Show. Obviously, some Jim Henson influence. A lot of people don't know what Today's Special is. Everybody that's heard of Today's Special or remembers it always gets points for me, because I was convinced for the longest time that my sister and I were the only people that ever apparently watched that show. Eureka's Castle was another Nickelodeon show that was interesting, but it's obviously all about Jim Henson in this block with Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, and The Muppet Show. What's your favorite part of that block?
All three.
All three?
Sesame, Muppets, and because they were all three very different shows. Sesame Street was kind of the educational thing, and nobody talked to me about Bert and Ernie. Just don't even, because that ain't true. I don't care. I'm not trying to be anti-gay here. They are best friends. When that story came out, it's like, really seriously, you're gonna turn childhood characters that people looked up to, you're gonna try to pervert that. And don't get me wrong, people's sexual orientation is what it is. That's fine. I don't care. But when you sit there and try to turn fictional characters gay or straight or whatever, it didn't matter. They were best friends. I mean, like, I can't see any couple, whether they're heterosexual or homosexual, I cannot see them arguing over who has the most or the least amount of grape juice. That's what best friends do, damn it. It's one of those things where it's like, wow, I can't. And then Cookie Monster. They tried to make Cookie Monster healthy. Are you kidding? His whole point is to eat cookies. It's in his name.
And we don't even want to get started with Elmo.
Oh no!
But I think the best thing, and it's kind of something you pointed out about what the Henson crew was doing there, is that they created 3 shows basically in the same type of time frame that were completely different. Even though there's some crossover in a way, and they're all Muppets, etc. It's 3 very different atmospheres and kind of feel that each of those shows brings out of you. Which makes them distinct and was helped them be able to coexist in a way in that same couple decades. So that was impressive. The supplement.
Really
Go ahead.
quickly, really quickly. I'm sorry, really quickly. While I don't forget about this. Most recently, our buddies Dan, Greg, and Chuck over on Talking in Circles had their ultimate Saturday morning cartoon lineup thing where they each made, like, if they were in charge
Right.
of
It
television
was a good episode.
programming. Right. So they just recently did this, and now
I'm
that
very
you're
mad that I didn't get invited to do that with them.
now that, well, I'm sure we can do it on Tooncast. I don't care. Whatever. Anyway, since you mentioned that, and I mentioned that Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, and the Muppets are three very different yet similar shows. The way I'm now looking at them as a almost 35-year-old guy is Sesame Street is your morning education. Fraggle Rock would be your after school adventure, and the Muppet Show would take place of something like Entertainment Tonight or something where it would be your evening comedy
Hmm.
for kids. And the Muppet Show by far was the most adult program out of the three.
Yeah, I think that's why that I like it the most now. I
Yeah.
probably would have picked Sesame Street growing up, but I definitely like a lot about the Muppet Show still. Um,
There's a lot to like about. I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but
I
there's a
like it.
lot to like about Sesame Street. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I like a lot of the characters on Sesame Street, but my favorites as a kid and even now are Bert and Ernie. One of my favorite Bert and Ernie episodes, or Bert and Ernie skits, or whatever you want to call it, is when they go to the tomb.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I absolutely love that. It was just so amazing. Okay, I'm sorry.
Nope,
Go ahead.
you can interrupt anytime. And then I rolled some people's eyes probably because in our supplemental episode for that block, we talked about the best puppets of all time, in which I very much omitted intentionally omitted Miss Piggy from my list completely because of my disdain for that character.
Okay, why? Explain to me again why you hate her.
I think it's just every bad stereotype about women, and with a dose of feminism and a dose of pig, and a just annoying voice and personality. And Kermit deserves better. Then we got into our next block, which happened to be a game show block. And in the game show block, we talked about Guts, Legends of the Hidden Temple, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, Wild and Crazy Kids, and Double Dare. What are your thoughts about game shows from back in the day?
Oh, I liked Wheel of Fortune. Oh, I'm sorry.
Kids game shows.
I really miss Concentration. Anyway, I wasn't too big of a fan of Double Dare. I liked the first couple of seasons, but after a while, it's like, okay, this is getting old.
But the obstacle course at the end was awesome.
Yeah, reminded me of American Gladiators at the time, though. It's a kid version of American Gladiators. I love Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was one of the cooler ones. I never saw Guts. I never saw Wild and Crazy Kids. Probably why I'm not on a lot of the game show block episodes of the podcast.
If I had to pick the one I watched the most, it was Double Dare. That would seem to be like the go-to, the Michael Jordan of kids game shows. Like that was where it was at. But the one I probably enjoyed the most was Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego.
Oh, absolutely.
Not to say I didn't like. I agree with you. Legends of the Hidden Temple was awesome. I prefer that over Guts and Wild and Crazy Kids. But Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego was something I always wanted to be on. I wanted to play the bonus round in both Carmen Sandiego and Double Dare. So I had a special place for both of those. And there was a ton of other game shows that we did not cover, which we'll get to in a little bit. But Nickelodeon and a couple of those other channels were trying a lot of different game shows. Some of them did not last very long, so that's why there were so many of them. But we could have covered a whole slew of them. But these were probably the main, I would say, the most popular 5 game shows that we could have covered. And then after that, we had another supplemental episode, which was all about our favorite theme songs from season 1 of the Tele-Cast. So that was Mike and I, and we kind of walked down our 5 favorite season 1 theme song. So that's a good episode if you want one to go back and listen to, and you can listen to a bunch of songs in the meantime. So if you get tired of listening to us, you get some songs and us. So it kind of works both ways. Then we got into yet another block, and I guess you can call this one the kids sitcom block, or you can just call it the Saved by the Bell block. It was Good Morning Miss Bliss, Saved by the Bell, The College Years, Saved by the Bell the New Class, and California Dreams. Don't sell California Dreams short. It was a good show with an epic theme song. But as far as...
I always used to get that and the Raisins mixed up.
Oh, man.
The California Raisins were so much better than California
No.
Dreams.
But
Yes.
As far as the actual Saved by the Bell shows, I know we kind of talked about it since you were on most of these with me, but which version is your favorite out of Good Morning Miss Bliss, the classic, College Years, and the New Class?
New Class can die in a fire. New Class... God. The sad thing is, New Class is the longest one out of all of them. That is so sad. I'm sorry, folks. I'm about to hit my head on my desk. I like the classic, but I found it got old a little bit after a while. My favorite is College Years because they actually made them grow up, made them go away from Bayside, put them in a new environment, basically took Kelly away from Zach for at least the first season or half of the first season. You know,
it had much more of like Another World. Was that the Disney spin or the Cosby spinoff?
No,
A Different World.
Yeah,
it had that feel, kind of, where it was just like more of an adult show or more of a mature show, but still Saved by the Bell. And I did absolutely love it back in the day. But I Saved by the Bell, the original, I can watch over and over and over again. I don't care. I don't care if it's nostalgia or what. I still enjoy that show. Call me crazy.
No, I mean, you're right, and it is. I mean, it is still very, very enjoyable. I just, after a while, as it was airing, and as, you know, even in reruns, it's like, show the College Years already. That's what I like the most. No, I do really enjoy Saved by the Bell. It had a lot of funny moments. I mean, probably one of the first kids' television programs where men were, at least in Slater's case, they were emasculated a lot. Because, let's face it, Jessie was no princess.
Yeah, that's true. After the Saved by the Bell block, we did another supplemental episode. JT and I talked about our childhood crushes that may have been a part of any of the season 1 shows. We talked about Leah Remini, who was in a Saved by the Bell episode, Clarissa herself. We talked about a couple of the girls from Hey Dude, Jennifer Love Hewitt, since she was on Kids Incorporated. The girl from the Saved by the Bell, the New Class, I can never remember her name. Tiffany Amber Thiessen from Saved by the Bell.
Yeah.
So we talked about a bunch of our childhood crushes that may have appeared somewhere in season 1. And then we moved on to yet another block, and this one was just kind of the off-the-wall block, I guess you can call it that. The zany block. It was You Can't Do That on Television, Land of the Lost, the ABC Weekend Specials, Hey Vern, It's Ernest, and Pee-wee's Playhouse. So that was all over the place. Obviously, a lot of people don't know about You Can't Do That on Television, but that was one of the pioneers of Nickelodeon before Nickelodeon became popular. And it's something that has never been able to be duplicated. Such a classic show for really showing a specific moment in television history, as far as youth television at least.
Right.
You know, Land of the Lost, that's something that was very much in my memory banks and something I remember fondly from being a child. That is something that if you remember that show fondly, do not watch it. It will ruin your memories. As far as Hey Vern, It's Ernest, and Pee-wee's Playhouse, I know you're familiar with some of those. Do you have a preference out of those two?
Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Yeah, I mean, talk about unique shows. That is, again, something that has and never will be duplicated. Although they have been talking about bringing it back.
I was going to say, they've been talking about bringing it back.
I said, talking about bringing it back and actually duplicating the success of it is two different things.
Well, they kind of did bring it back. I mean, kinda, a little bit, because Shout Factory has just released the complete series collection for Pee Wee's Playhouse on DVD and Blu-ray. So there is that. So at least they brought it back in physical media form, so people can watch all of the episodes in one place.
Right.
And you know, we got to talk about that just for a second, because a lot of these shows, I know Clarissa has had DVDs. I know Saved by the Bell has had DVDs and stuff like that. But a lot of these shows, like the you can't do that on television, I'm sure, might have one or two single disc releases, but a lot of these shows aren't on DVD. I know Sesame Street is. I know The Muppet Show is. I know Fraggle Rock
Yeah,
is.
but a lot of them are not.
But a lot of the ones that we've covered here are not. Like, I would probably say 75% of the ones that we, like the more obscure ones, are not on DVD.
Right. And I think it's something where people just didn't realize they're just kid shows at the time, so they didn't do a great job preserving some of them. And the other ones have some copyright issues that you have to deal with, especially the next block we'll get to. Before we get to that block, the last supplemental episode we did for the season was 30.5, which was the most hated characters, which Mike joined me on. So we talked about our most hated characters from season 1. I think I might have talked about Miss Piggy in that one, maybe not.
I think so.
And then we got to our last block, which was the music-themed shows, which included Sharon Lois and Bram's The Elephant Show, Mickey Mouse Club, and Kids Incorporated. So those were kind of the more of the music-based shows there. There's only 3 of them, and those shows definitely are hard to come by as far as getting releases because of the music that's in them. I don't know.
Plus,
go ahead.
Well, plus we said in those episodes we wouldn't want to watch them again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the Elephant Show too much. It's somewhat decent for its time, and obviously Mickey Mouse Club and Kids Incorporated produced a whole lot of stars, like we talked about in the episodes, from Britney Spears to Justin Timberlake to Christina Aguilera, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Fergie, Ryan Gosling. So there's a lot of people involved in those 2 shows that would later become other popular for other things. So that's fun, and it was fun dealing with all of the music shows. And then we finally got to the point where we would get to our Listener's Choice episode, the first ever GCRN show that the listeners basically got to choose the topic for. And that'll probably be a trend going forward. But the Listener's Choice reveal that we just revealed recently, when that episode aired, went back to the game show block and one of the many game shows that we didn't talk about, which was Nick Arcade. Mike and I recorded that episode. Maybe it would have been a better show today or with a different host, but we gave it kudos for what it was trying to do. And we also thanked all the people want to thank all the people that voted for the Listener's Choice. We had, what was it, Secret World of Alex Mack? Is that a show?
Yeah.
Got votes. Welcome Freshman, Nick Arcade, some other game shows, Finders Keepers, What Would You Do, Video Power. A lot of different shows got votes. I think we had, I don't know, 15 or 20 people vote on that at least. So Nick Arcade became the first Listener's Choice episode. And I don't think that was a bad choice. That was the one that I at least remembered from my childhood, so I didn't mind talking about that one.
And it kind of fit in with the whole block of what the overall theme of season 1.
Right.
I mean that you could have easily switched out
Wild and Crazy Kids or something like that.
Yeah.
I did want to take a quick second to thank all the people that did join me and help make season 1 possible. I don't mind riding solo every once in a while, and I did that on probably 3 or 4 different episodes. But it's always fun to talk with somebody if they can remember the show. So, obviously, Mike, you were in a good majority of the show, so I appreciate your help with season 1.
I have no life.
Steve Megatron Phillips helped out on a bunch of shows. JT from Saskatoon helped out on a ton of shows. He has seen just about as many obscure shows as I have. So
he does live in Canada, so there is that.
Really enjoyed JT being on the show. Tara the Rising Star was obviously on a bunch of episodes. Let's see, who else did I have? Chris from Stapleton from Chicken Pot Pod. He joined me on the Today Special show, the Lost episode of season 1. And then I also had Glade Packer was on the show. He was on one of the supplemental Muppet shows, or the Best Puppet shows. So yeah, thanks to all of those guys for joining me, and guys and girl. And hopefully we can just open up, even have a more diverse group going forward into season 2 and beyond. So it's always good to hear from different people, and that was one of the keys going into Telecast, that I wanted a lot of different voices heard, so nobody would get tired of me and Mike yapping at each other like we tend to do on all our other shows.
All right, hold on. Wait a second here. You recently have done a history project on the Geekcast Radio Network, and you told me that I was in 85% of the entirety of the network content when it comes to podcasts.
It would have been more if I would have let you in on all the Telecast episodes.
But it wasn't even that. There's some that I just like Guts. I don't remember
Right.
Guts. Like,
Well, that was
I'm not
find
gonna
people.
sit here. I'm not gonna sit here and be on a show that I don't know and I don't want to talk about.
Right.
But at the same time, I haven't had, a lot of complaints of, oh, why don't you go away? Why don't you stop podcasting? So it's, I know you were, but I'm just saying that it's like,
The biggest thing for us as we do go through the Telecast is finding people that enjoyed the show, or at least are willing to watch a few episodes, or do some research on the show so they can give an opinion on it. And that's why we have a pretty good rotation of people and voices. So that's good. Overall, I think the best thing about Telecast, from my standpoint, is just being able to kind of take a personal trip down memory lane, and not doing it alone. Doing it with some friends, doing it with some new people that I've met along the way, and doing it with the listeners and getting in on their comments. We have had a bunch of comments on the different posts, the episode posts at Geekcast Radio Network. So that was good. So my favorite thing is probably just the reaction that Telecast got from the listeners. And not only the reaction from the listeners, but the reaction while I was doing something fun, while I was just taking a trip down memory lane and reliving some of the things I liked from my childhood. So that's probably my favorite thing, and I think the best thing about Telecast is being able to do something fun and get a good reaction out of the listeners.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Mine was probably some of, just talking about some of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
I said recently on the most recent Altered Geek episode, Steve, myself, and Birdman Dodd from ThisWeekInGeek.net sat down, and we just had an all-out, no-holds-barred geek discussion on anything and everything. And it was, we talked about a little bit of the network stuff and how podcasting has kind of, influenced us and evolved us over the time that all of us have been doing it. And for me, what it is, pick a topic that we all enjoy and want to talk about and find the time, sit down and talk about it. Find the time to get all of us to get online, no matter who it is, whether it's me and you, whether it's me and Steve, whoever it is, doesn't matter. And we sit there for half hour and a half, whatever, and just have a discussion. And that's that. I do the I've said this many times in my overall 6 years of podcasting. I do the podcasting, I do the records and all that stuff for myself. If people gravitate to it, if people enjoy it, that's great. But I do it for my own enjoyment overall.
Right, and I think that's what you have to do if you're going to be doing it at all. Otherwise, there's really no point. Just like most things you do, you should get some enjoyment out of it, regardless. But that's why I was saying I think like the best, or at least my favorite part of this, was being able to do something that I like and do something that I was getting enjoyment, but at the same time something that was getting a lot of feedback from the listeners, and a lot of positive feedback on, and then kind of gives us a good transition right into I wanted to kind of go down a little bit about the iTunes feedback that we have gotten. Steve Megatron there had given us a site that you could go to that you could actually pull up iTunes from different countries for specific shows, something that we had never been able to do before. Before we were obviously limited to just seeing what the U.S. viewers and listeners were saying.
Right.
So I did a lookup of the iTunes reviews for Telecast from outside the U.S. and inside the U.S. So there's been a couple that we were never able to talk about on air.
Okay.
So I want to give those people a chance since we never got a shout out. But just for the record, as far as iTunes goes in the U.S., it's either 25 or 35 reviews.
No, it's 25 ratings, 17
Right,
25
25 ratings, that's what I meant. And we are holding a 5-star rating.
Yes.
Through all of those 20 plus ratings and through all the reviews, so we're staying pretty steady with 5 stars. In fact, there's only been 2 total people that have written a review. This is worldwide. Only 2 people that have written a review that have not given us a 5-star rating, and they both gave us a 4.
Right.
So I mean, that type of feedback's excellent.
Oh, absolutely.
Real quick, I'm not going to read through all 19 reviews because that would take a long time. Yeah. But I wanted to at least give a shout out to the couple outside the U.S. We had one from Canada, and that was left by Alex R. 1987, and it was entitled "Awesome Trip Down Memory Lane." And the review read, "This show is an awesome trip down memory lane. Some of these shows I never watched, but this is a great show to listen to and learn about all of them." So thank you, Alex from Canada.
I think that's Alex Ricci, honestly. He's one of the I think that's who that is. He's one of the Twig listeners, and he gravitated over towards us once I think after I had been on Nerd News Network over at Twig for a while.
Gotcha. And the other one actually came to us from Australia. And that was from a user named Big Bad Booty Daddy with a bunch of zeros and ones and stuff, so it's not all the letters. Anyway, also a 5-star review, and his title was "I Wish I Was a Teenager Again." And the review read that the GeekCast crew have created another entertaining podcast. This podcast will take you back to those favorite kids shows you enjoyed in your childhood. After listening to this podcast, you start to appreciate how great children's programming really was back in the day. I love listening to the guys give their personal opinions, but I most enjoy the fun facts given towards the end of each show. I am really hoping the guys decide to review other, more family-type shows such as Blossom, Parker Lewis Can't Lose, and The Wonder Years. Please give this podcast a go and give the guys a high rating in which they thoroughly deserve.
I don't know how kid-friendly Parker Lewis is, but...
But, so, not just 5 stars here in the U.S., both a 5-star rating from Canada and Australia here.
Awesome.
Among all the U.S. ones, which we read, for the most part, as they happened throughout the course of Season 1. So, that's awesome. Like I said, that's part of what makes this fun, is getting that much positive feedback and unanimous feedback. For a long time, I believe, when we did our year-end review shows at the network, that Tele-Cast for a long time was one of the highest rating shows we had. Yep. Not trying to toot my own horn, but that was fun. Lie. Obviously, now it's probably would be taken over by some of the new style of shows that we've been doing with Talking in Circles and Altered Geek and some of that type of stuff, off the cuff maybe. And while Weekend at the Movies existed, that show as well.
You mean it's dead?
I don't know. We'll have to see. But
it's dead, Chip. It's dead.
We're giving it all she got. But yeah,
I can't give it no more, Captain.
We'll have to see now that those shows are all going and kind of full-fledged and have somewhat of a following when season 2 kicks off. If we get any of that following back or what exactly happens. But we're going to take a quick break now that I mentioned season 2 before we unveil the theme song contest winner and before we unveil what's coming in season 2. So we'll be right back.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Remote Control is the new TV podcast from the GeekCast Radio Network. We'll be covering TV shows and topics from the year 2000 to whenever now is. We'll have special themed episodes entitled Pilot and Season Premieres, as well as finishing finales. We'll also have Season Pass episodes, where we take a look at an entire season of a TV show. Remote Control can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and www.geekcastradio.com. So tune in, because we are all remote-controlled.
Hi, this is Greg.
This is Chuck.
And this is Dan. And we are Talking in Circles.
Because the world needs another podcast, we are here as GeekCast Radio's newest edition. And as the title says, each week we get lost in conversation about a wide range of topics, including movies, comics, games, art, TV, and even occasionally sports.
We play games and discuss pivotal topics like who would win in a fight, the Kool-Aid Man or Tony the Tiger, and examine the hot-button issues of the world of geekdom.
We keep things fresh by taking timeless topics in new directions. We are simply 3 friends having a fun time talking about life's most fascinating foibles.
Stay connected with us every Tuesday on iTunes or at geekcastradio.com.
Thank you, as always, for sticking with us. Real quick, before we get on to what the future is for Telecast, which we've somewhat teased in a couple different blogs, but we haven't given away all of the information yet. So before we get to that, we do have one last piece of business to take care of, and that would be unveiling the winner of the theme song contest that we had going throughout season 1. If you're not familiar, obviously at the end of every episode of Telecast season 1, there was a mashup of theme song clips that included all of the season 1 shows except for one. And the contest was who could give me the order that all of those theme songs appeared and what show was missing. We had actually about 10 to 15 people submit responses, and there were a few of them that were correct. There were some that were wrong, but there was a few that were correct. And we took the ones that were correct, kind of drew out of a hat to see who the winner would be. And the winner of the theme song contest was someone by the name of Jalen Jade, the Jade Geek. I don't know anything else about him or her. I assume it's a him. But they correctly identified the entire order of all of the shows, and they did also give us the show that was missing, which was Saved by the Bell, the new class. Kind of a trick there.
God, yeah, that's a little...
I believe it's signed as Jeff from Salt Lake City, Utah. So Jalen Jade, the Jade Geek, or Jeff, I don't know how he's going to be referred to, but he is the winner of the theme song contest, and if he would like to claim his prize, which I guess I can reveal as well, the prize will
be helpful.
Well, I know a lot of the shows are not available on DVD, but Jeff is able to select any show from season 1 that is available on DVD, and one of the season sets of that DVD from that show will be sent to him. Cool. So if he could pick season 1 of Saved by, well, I think it's a 2-pack for Saved by the Bell, but it would be like seasons 1 and 2 of Saved by the Bell, season 1 of Hey Dude, season 1 of The Muppet Show, whatever he wants will be sent to him in Salt Lake City, Utah. The only trick is he had to be listening to the show to know that he won, and he has to obviously send me another email giving the contact information so that I can actually have an address to ship it to. So if you're listening and you know you won, reply to me once again at the same email. If you can't find the email, just send me a tweet at OptimusSolo, and I will take care of you. All right. Getting into season 2, I'm going to give you a quick chance first, because there is going to be some stuff that's happening between season 1 and season 2 in whatever we want to call the off season. So there will be some stuff happening that we kind of teased to in the blog about the future of TV podcasts at the Geekcast Radio Network. So I'm going to let Mike talk about that first, and then I will give you the reveal of what genre we will be covering in season 2 of the Telecast and some ideas of what shows to expect that will be coming. So Mike, what's happening in the off season?
All right, well, I got tired of waiting to talk about TV. I really, really did.
And then his chair broke, so now he doesn't care.
What?
I said, and then your chair broke, so now you don't care.
Shut the hell up.
Inside joke.
Shut up. Jerk face.
I've been called worse.
So it took me about a year. Between March of 2013 and September, October of 2014, I had this idea that I wanted to do a new TV podcast where the main focus would be current television for the most part. The only idea I had was I wanted Steve Megatron, who does all of our art for the podcast, the banners, the website, all that stuff, does amazing work. I wanted him to make us a giant GCRN remote control. And I figured, oh, well, hey, I can just call it Remote Control. So Remote Control has launched. It is the new TV podcast. It is a podcast where we cover anything from 2000 to whenever now is. So, in your left hand, you could have a bunch of episodes of the Telecast, which is pretty much anything from 1999 to, say, 1950, for example. Anything backwards in time. Remote Control is anything forwards in time from 2000 and now. And throughout this process, Kevin and I kind of got back together and said, hey, why don't we try doing collaboration and working on stuff? Because, where this really came from is that Steve Megatron and I really wanted to go talk about Boy Meets World. And Kevin's like, oh, no, that happened in the 90s. It has to be on Telecast. I'm like, oh, it ended in 2000. It can still. And that's where we kind of got where we're going to do crossovers. But Remote Control is a completely different animal than what the Telecast is. That was my goal. I didn't want to just make the same podcast twice. And that wouldn't be fair to Kevin. So Remote Control, I introduced something called Season Passes, where we watch an entire season of a television show, take notes, whatever, and then sit down, record the episode, and talk about the entire season of a show in one podcast. Some of those are going to be crossovers with the Telecast, stuff like some of my favorites, Nash Bridges, Boy Meets World, like Angel, what else? What else crossed over? Now and Again, from CBS, which actually only had one season, but either way. So that's what's going to happen. I had asked Kevin, in the 8th hour of that original meeting to get the 6 seasons, the 210 episodes of the Telecast, I asked him, well, what about game shows? He's like, yeah, nah, whatever. I think that's what you said. I don't remember. And as I was going through Remote Control, the regular Remote Control episodes are going to be network discussions. So the first 6 or the first 5 are going to be all about one episode each for ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, and the CW. So those will be the overall general discussion kind of episodes. But I came up with this thing called the Game Show Grotto. And really where I got the whole grotto thing was, and I cannot lie about this, it was the Playboy Mansion. So the Game Show Grotto is basically where we're going to talk about game shows, stuff like Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, Concentration, Hollywood Squares, $25,000 Pyramid, Let's Make a Deal, Family Feud, Name That Tune, Scrabble, The Price is Right, Sale of the Century, Press Your Luck, aka Whammy. Some of these, not all of them, some of them that started, take Jeopardy, started in the incarnation that I know started in 1984. I know there was an incarnation before that in the 60s, but let's face it, Alex Trebek made that show what it is, and he still does. So that episode, and same thing with Wheel of Fortune, those would be one podcast on both feeds for Telecast and Remote Control.
Right, so anything that aired on both sides of 2000 will be basically put on both feeds.
Yeah.
Whereas anything after will be just put on Remote Control's feed, and where anything retro will be just put on Telecast feed.
Right.
And then we're also going to be stealing part of Mike's idea, since he was stealing some stuff from us. We're also stealing one of his ideas because I liked it, and that is the season passes. We will be doing a few season pass episodes for Telecast as well. We obviously won't be doing pilot premieres or finales like Remote Control is, because that doesn't make any sense. But we can do the season pass episodes. So if there's an episode that we kind of do the brief overview on Telecast that myself and somebody else want to take a deeper look at, or 2 people want to take a deeper look at, we will do some season pass episodes for the retro shows on Telecast as well. So you'll see season passes on both podcasts.
Can I give an example?
Yes.
There's an episode coming up in season 2.
Oh, you can't give an example yet.
No. I'm not going to say what the show is, okay. But episode 47 of season 2 is one of my favorite action television shows of all time. We will, after we do the general discussion episode in episode 47, we may at some point down the line, not right away, but down the line, we may go through the 4 seasons of that show at some point. Season 1 would be one podcast, season 2 would be another, so on and so forth.
So just taking season 1 of Telecast, for example, like let's say Saved by the Bell.
Or Clarissa, but yeah.
We did the overview. We did the quick look at the who is who and what they're doing now and the interesting trivia about it, etc., and our general thoughts, down memory lane about that. But if Saved by the Bell, for example, 2 people really wanted to look at, then we could each watch all of season 1, and then we would have one podcast where we just kind of recap all of season 1, highlights, lowlights, what we liked, what we didn't like, general thoughts on that season. So that's kind of how that would work. It's just a more of an in-depth look with specific examples from episodes, whereas these overview episodes, the general episodes, the host might have only rewatched, somewhere between 3 to 6 episodes or something just to kind of catch back up on it, whereas the season pass episodes, you'll watch an entire season. So
exactly,
that is how that's going to work. So in the off season, you will get the game show Grotto, and you'll hear all about these classic game shows, and that will fill up the feed and give you some more content as we prepare for season 2 of the Telecast. You might also get a couple season pass episodes based on some of the season 1 content that we did talk about. So we might get some test season pass episodes along with the game show Grotto. So you'll have plenty of stuff still being put into that feed during the off season. Mm-hmm. Then we will get to season 2, and a lot of different people have asked me what season 2 will cover. A lot of different people have asked if Telecast will cover this show, that show, or the other. We do plan on covering most shows that have been mentioned, but we're doing them in order. We're doing them based on genres, because that's what I want to do. And the second genre that we will be covering, we have titled season 2, The Action Block. So season 2 will be all about action shows from back in the 80s, 90s, etc. There will be one other new thing that is introduced in season 2 that will continue through the lifetime of the Telecast, something that we did not do in season 1. So I will give you an inside look as to what that will be. So not only will go ahead.
That kid is so smelly.
So not only will we have the regular season 2 episodes, the action block, which will consist of such things as, I'm just giving you a kind of a snippet here, Hawaii 5-0, Magnum PI, the A-Team, Miami Vice, my favorite show of all time, MacGyver, 21 Jump Street, let's see here, Walker, Texas Ranger,
Nash Bridges.
Yeah, Nash Bridges, NYPD Blue, Law and Order. So those are some of the types of shows that you will see during season 2. Not all of them. There will actually be, we had 35 episodes in season 1, season 2 will consist of 37 episodes. So we'll have 37 different episodes. One of them will be the listener's choice. One of them will be the wrap-up. So we have 35 different shows that we're covering. The new thing that we're introducing also in season 2, for those people that are thinking that some of their favorite shows are going to be left out, we are doing something called rerun episodes. So as we were watching TV in the 80s and 90s, we were watching all these new shows, like I said, like when MacGyver was brand new or when Hawaii 5-0 was brand new. But as happens when you watch TV, sometimes you do get exposure to shows that are only being aired in reruns. So even though they weren't airing live in the 80s or 90s, we are having rerun episodes where we can talk about stuff that we might have seen even though it wasn't live. I will run down the entire slate of season 2 reruns right now for you. So if you're an old school classic TV fan, you're in luck, because we will be covering rerun episodes on the following: Gunsmoke, Bonanza, Dragnet, Mission Impossible, Starsky, and Hutch. All right, so those are the main ones that we'll be covering during season 2. And then, of course, there will be the listener's choice episode, which we'll lay out the rules as season 2 opens. So that is what we're covering in the action block. You can expect some tweaks in the format a little bit. You can expect a new theme song. You can expect maybe another contest along the way, and we will still bring back supplemental episodes. I'm not going to tell you what they consist of, but we will have some supplemental episodes throughout the action block. Mike, thoughts or comments on season 2?
I can't wait, because I gotta say, I can't wait to see what you come up with for a new theme song, because I'm sorry, I wanted to kill all 3 of those damn characters. I could, by the time season 1 ended, I wanted to shoot the mouse, the chipmunk, and the guy with the really deep voice, because I just could not stay in that theme song after a while.
Luckily for you, I have made it my goal for every season coming forward to try to annoy you in different ways with things. So I'm going to try to get worse. So... Oh, no, I'm not going to try to get worse, but I am going to try to annoy you with them. So we'll see what I come up with. I have a whole off season to come up with it. So,
what I am kind of more excited for, I mean, I'm excited for a lot of these discussions in the action block. What I'm kind of a little bit more excited for, specifically to one of my all-time favorite cop shows, I already mentioned it, Nash Bridges. This month, as we're recording this, actually 10 days from when this episode airs, November 18th, 2014, Nash Bridges, the complete series, finally, seasons 4 through 6, along with 1 through 3, are going to be released on DVD. So what I'm really excited about is doing season passes for Telecast. That's really what
I'm... some of those happening. I don't even care if I have to do... Well, I don't know if I'll do the MacGyver ones or not, or if I'll eventually do a MacGyver podcast or whatever. But there's a bunch of these that I actually already own on DVD, so I will definitely be doing those. And there will be an entire slate of season 2 episodes and the whole kind of rundown made as a blog during the off season. Probably as soon as season 1 is completely done, I will put a blog up there that gives you a whole rundown of all 37 episodes of season 2 and what to expect. So you can pick out your favorite ones and kind of have a radar on for when those may be coming up in the schedule, because they're all numbered, they're all in order. So it's all good. All right. Anything else, sir?
Nope, that's it.
All righty then. So I would like to thank TFG1 Mike for being with me today as we wrapped up season 1. And of course, I would like to thank you, the listener, for joining us here on the Telecast. If you want to leave us feedback on the show, your thoughts on season 1, or your thoughts on what you're hoping for in season 2, something you want to see come back, something you want to see go away, any types of changes you may want, now is the time to let your voice be heard so that we can make some tweaks based on your feedback for season 2. If you don't speak, we won't change anything, except for what I want to change. All right. So
now, wait a second here. I know it's your show, but come on now.
So you can do that by going to this episode's post. Go to geekcastradio.com, find the season 1 wrap-up post, and make comments on that page so that I can get your feedback. You can also continue to rate our show and leave us feedback in iTunes. Like we talked about, we have 5-star ratings going on. We would love to get more voices on iTunes as well. You can also keep up to date with all things Geekcast related by becoming a fan of us on Facebook. Mike will keep you up to date. He'll give you posts there on when the different things during the off season are happening, when the blog goes up for season 2, when season 2 is going to begin, if we're doing any season passes. He'll put all of that on Facebook. So if you become a fan of us on Facebook, you will stay in the loop. All right. So I guess that does it for now. Real quick, what's your Twitter in case people want it?
TFG and Mike. What do you mean in case people want it?
And mine's OptimusSolo. So Mr. Theme Song Contest winner, you can tweet me at OptimusSolo. If you also have feedback and you don't want to go to the webpage, you can tweet me or figure out a way to send me some email. I'll give you that through a direct message possibly. All right, so that does it for now. We hope we succeeded in entertaining you, informing you, and most importantly, unleashing the geek in you on this episode of the Telecast. And we hope that you will tune in for our next episode when we will begin season 2, and we also hope that you'll tune in during the off season to the game show Grotto. For now, I'm your host, OptimusSolo, with
TFG and Mike.
And we will see you next time on the Telecast.
Here's your stuff, Ted. Bye, Barnum. Bye-bye, happiness. You know
such a fool.
And guys, I can't believe this is happening. It's such a drag.
Hey, it's not that bad. It's only summer school.
And it's not like it'll be forever. Go home, pass a few courses, before you know it, you'll be back at the Boy Nun.
Yeah, I just can't help but think that in a little while there'll just be another computer chip in Mr. Ernst's file of former employees. I'm sure gonna miss you.
Me too.
Yeah, it's not going to be the same without our good old Ted.
Bye-bye, Ted. Bye-bye, super guy. He's off to summer high. He'll like out to cry. Goodbye to Ted, goodbye. Goodbye to Ted, goodbye.
Ted, come on, let's go.
Yeah, I'll be there in a second, Mr. Ernst.
Okay, Ted. Come on.
Well, guys, I hate long goodbyes. So
See ya.
goodbye. See ya.
Bye. Ted. I just wanted to. I'm gonna miss you. Hurry back, okay?
And now, our final choice for a school song written by Screech Powers. Don't blame me if it stinks. Maestro?
It seems like only yesterday we started, but soon we'll put away our books and pens. We'll go on with our lives once we have parted, but how can we say farewell to our friends? The double days, the parties and the dancing, cramming for a dessert until 3.
The football games, the maps, and the romances.
Soon Bayside will be just a memory. Our 4 years here have all become unraveled, and so our high school story finally ends. But years from now, no matter where we've traveled, we'll all look back and think about our friends. We'll all look back and think about our
Second, before I sign, there's something I have to do. Yeah.
Now what?
Well, I gotta say goodbye to Gertrude.
So say goodbye.
Yeah, well, I'd like to do it with a song.
A song?
Yeah, I've written out the lyrics here. It's called Goodbye to Gertrude. Well, I wrote it myself, and I'd like it if you'd all sing along with me.
Oh, of course. I'll sing with you, Sam.
Oh, dear friend, I'd be proud to sing with you. Gertrude, it's the least I can do.
Great.
Oh, brother, a song to a car.
Gertrude, old girl, my heart's in a whirl, 'cause these goodbyes are hard to come by. We'll try not to cry as we say goodbye.
Not singing, Jody. I don't think I want to buy a car from a man who wouldn't sing goodbye to my old Gertrude.
Gertrude, old girl, my heart's in a whirl.
That's
'Cause these goodbyes are hard to come by.
We'll try not to cry as we say goodbye.
Why, you're more than a car, you're like a friend, and that's why I hate to see this long road end. Why we've traveled through blizzards, through fog and through ice, and we've crisscrossed this whole country once or twice. We got only one ticket in all of those years, from that big traffic jam when I jammed your gears.
Gertrude, old girl, my heart's in a whirl, 'cause these goodbyes are hard to come by. We'll try not to cry as we say goodbye.
Remember the time that I forgot your brake, and you almost drifted right into the lake. You waited at the church for me and my bride. You gave the new Mrs. Crenshaw her very first ride. All of those memories go back such a long way. They make this goodbye so hard to say.
Gertrude, old girl, my heart's in a whirl, 'cause these goodbyes are hard to come by. We'll try not to cry as we say